Hello and welcome to Masquerade Breach, episode 10. Shh, don't tell the Camarilla. I really don't need any more shit on my plate.
We've
I,
watched that enough.
I'm Blazewing.
I'm Captain Cosplays.
And I'm Amelia.
What the hell was
The
that?
dog!
I'm Jasper.
And I'm your host with the... I'm not your host. I'm Ocean.
We're talking today about Midnight Mass episode 7, which is actually the final episode in the short series that we've been going through. We've done basically all of them, and there's a reason I love this series so much. But I have my, traditional no context notes for you if you'd like to hear them in regards to the rundown for this episode.
Full no context, go.
Quiet opening, just night sounds. I wonder if Monsignor knows he fucked up yet. Mom's been turned. Frowny face. And I actually wrote out the words frowny face instead of just drawing a frowny face. Townsfolk rampage for blood. Have some fucking dignity. Cop's kid knows this isn't right. Maybe regret? 3 bullets left. Father, son, and get fucked hoser. Lighting is too dark. I get why, but damn. First thought of escape is for the kid. Holy shit, firebomb! Fuck you, Bev. At least Riley's mom came around. Mom called the bitch out. Fuck yeah. Jesus, fuck Annie. Monsignor loved Doc's mom. Monsignor's Doc's dad. Fuck off. Holy racist comment, Batman. Get the kids to safety. Bev's a fucking psychopath. Burn, baby, burn. Annie died, but she got better. Well, boats are gone. Dousing the vamp in gas. Good Lisa. Bev made a goddamn nest. Monsignor's finally seeing things for what they are and looks at Bev with pity now. Now the regret sets in. Fucking coward.
Yep.
That sums it up.
Yep.
Thank you for coming to join our TED Talk. That's all for now. We'll see you next time.
What did I do? So Bijou, these are my notes from the episode. They're like no context, so you at least get that enjoyment. It's a thing. We're going to get into like the actual picking apart the episode like we've been doing hopefully for this entire series. I think we've been doing really well with that. But before we get into that, if you'd like to join us for next week, we are going to be watching the 1980s movie Near Dark. It is gory, it's gritty, it is very dark themed. There's a lot of blood and guts, and it is a stereotypical 1980s movie. So just be prepared for that. But that is the title of our final episode for Season 1, if you'd like to come and join us next week. Yes, we are doing Near Dark for next week, hopefully.
Near Dark.
We watch it on Wednesdays. You can watch it so long as you've got it watched by Monday. You should be good. Tell me, what did you guys think of episode 7?
I'm going first. Okay. I loved it. Before we start with the no you go ahead. No, you go ahead. Like, I'm just cutting to the chase. I loved it. I said this the other... I thought it was the perfect ending, and it completely encapsulated everything. All of the themes, all of the ideas. Everyone had an equally just ending. And everyone's ending was perfectly what it needed to be. And I loved it. I thought the series was so well done. It was so well thought out and planned.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, like, everything came full circle, and I loved it.
Anyone else?
Are we talking about specific things yet? Or
No,
are
just
we...
general overview of the
General?
episode.
Okay. Really, Chris, you got it. That's damn. It's it's hard to put it into words. I mean, I looked stuff up about this, and the creator of this had been planning Midnight Mass for like 10 years
Mm-hmm.
before it released, and it's very evident in the
Yep.
way that it ended. It's very evident. There is a lot of TLC put into this project.
Yep. Anything else? No? Cool. Anyone else?
Oh,
Ah,
okay. No, I love the last episode, and there's some when we get into it, I absolutely loved it because there's so much like the the plate was filling, and to the point the plate literally fell to the floor and it smashed to pieces. And basically, I love so much of the events of it unraveling that much to where it was like it was like an avalanche, and then it was slowly coming down, and then at the very end, and you're just like, yeah, you effed up, you effed up, and then. I just, oh, it was such a good series, and the fact that they put this and so much into context and so much into like different symbolisms. It was just like, okay, this is why we love this series because it has all the mystery, the thrill, the vampires, the trauma. It has. But it gives a sense of it does slightly give the sense of humor where you just like once we get into it you understand why we're just like you Bev.
Yep.
all right. I suppose I should give my aspect. Oh, here we go.
All right, Ocean.
Let me
What have you
get
got?
my notes here.
Oh dear.
Everyone wanted to know what notes. All right. So I really liked. Uh, I like the series in its entirety. It is the quintessential um, aspect of understanding to cliches and understanding how uh, just because you believe something doesn't necessarily make it true
Mm-hmm.
type thing. Uh, oh, there we go. Um, and the aspect between everything that I've seen has been unique, and it takes a fresh take to something that you don't normally see happening, especially with the idea of veering vampirism in a way that is, in a sense, different but has elements of the classics.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it shows that the true evil isn't even about the vampirism, it's about uh, how humanity approaches evil in itself and exactly what true evil looks like.
Mm-hmm.
When we look at Bev, we see the true evil. We don't see it's the indifference of it brings up another movie for me. If anyone's ever watched Boondock Saints,
Yes.
when the cardinal or when the father is preaching in the mass, he says, "But there is a greater evil, and it's the indifference of good men."
Mm-hmm.
And the idea behind that is Bev is the indifference of good men in the aspect that, like, throughout the thing she dehumanizes people so badly. She judges, she does all these things, and in the end you saw just as much as she just reaped what she sowed. It
Yep.
was amazing to watch, and I think that goes to full tilt at the end. And this the finale is something I would absolutely suggest anybody watch it because it's going to like it's going to rejuvenate and inspire you in other aspects of your life.
I think this series shows it outlines and shows us just how quickly corruption can spread, especially if you're not prepared to confront it. How quickly just even the slightest bit of doubt can take hold, and completely override any sense of reasoning or logic. I think this series shows what true, well, like you said, what true evil is. It's not necessarily, the evil being. It's not necessarily the devil. It's not necessarily, your priest. It's this idea that it just infests and corrupts and infects everything that it touches and twists and turns it into its own version of what it wants to be and creates just an insane mess out of everything. I absolutely love the way the characters played out this. I love the direction this series took. I love the way the directors portrayed everything, from the, pious, righteous man that Monsignor was supposed to be to, oh shit, he's actually just a human, easily corrupted, just like the rest of us. And it's actually Bev that you've got to watch out for. I think they're trying very much to make the point that it's not good and evil. It's not always black and white. It's not always right versus wrong. It's about weighing your options. It's about figuring out what's right for you. It's about staying true to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's not binary, and it never has been.
Yeah,
If that makes sense.
absolutely. Yeah, no, it really does. And the aspect behind all that, and how you described it, watching elements of this has given that a lot of this, we as human beings think very linearly, but in this movie you have to kind of adjust to the nonlinear aspect and the abstract within it, especially with how vampirism is in the movie and how he says angel, but as we all know, even with biblical text, nothing really changed. Nothing really changed demons from looking like angels, except for the singed wings or whatnot, which could have easily healed. The same concept is that vampirism is not the true evil. It's just something that is makes corruption easier. And in this process, Bev absolutely accelerates the destruction of humanity
Oh
and
my god.
continues to go down repeatedly, that she's just driving home this nail in the coffin, and that these people on this island were, essentially destitute, and Bev took advantage of that and then immediately continued to drive home and dehumanize people.
So let's talk specifics. What were points for you guys in this episode that kind of stood out for you? What are moments that just kind of grabbed you and maybe kind of dragged you along for the ride, whether or not you wanted to go?
Oh my god, I'm going first. Aaron's speech.
Yes.
Aaron's speech about the afterlife is the focal point of this show, because the thing is, right, is that there's a lot that the whole town has to say about good and evil, but there is also this, so I don't want to say subplot, because it's not a subplot, it's kind of on equal footing, where the whole show has religious overtones, so you have to address it. You have to, you know, and the way that Erin thinks about the universe and how she this viewpoint of hers definitely is like, it accounts for her coping for her lost child. It is like pale blue dot, it is Christianity, it is Buddhism, it is like a little mix of everything, honestly. And it is, it's just awesome, you know. I there's no other words for it. I was speechless. I thought about it for days.
Go ahead.
Oh, I didn't know if you were done, Chester. I was just like,
I'm done. Sorry.
I agree full-heartedly with the speech. That really got me, and I was like, oh, yes, that is pure symbolism. That is a pure, well-conversed speech about what they think of afterlife. And I was just like, that's interesting. Okay, and I was like, let's go upon that. I think another sense of it was the scene where think it was like I think it was before where uh he he, he I might need it here. I am hearing loud noises and you might need to skip me into the bit. Give me 1 second.
Why don't we have somebody else pick up while we're waiting?
Oh,
Nope.
Can I talk about another moment that I loved?
Yeah.
Not specifically a specific moment, but I do like how much in a previous episode there was so much foreshadowing with one single thing, where Bev, when Monsignor Pruitt gets vamped up,
Yep.
Bev says that we don't need priests. We can just sing hymns the way that they used to before, like before priests were a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Or I don't remember the exact line. But not only does that foreshadow her turning against Pruitt, but also it foreshadows the ending where there are no priests, there are no leaders. It's just everybody is singing. Everybody is singing a hymn.
Yeah, we'll get to that. That was a gorgeous.
I was about to hop on the hymn, so I'm so glad someone brought it up.
The hymn.
The hymn. So
The hymn.
the hymn that is sung is "Nearer My God to Thee,"
Yep.
and we all know that from the scene in the Titanic. However,
We all know.
that the history of that song was it was alleged, like they don't have definite evidence that it was, but there was a moment where at the actual sinking of the RMS Titanic, there was a moment where all the band players, because they were playing music so no one would panic, and then everyone panicked, all were told, okay, get in a lifeboat, now's the time. And the leader of the band was like, okay guys, you can go. And exactly like in the movie, he then started playing, and then they all came back, and then they all died together.
Yeah.
There was the SS Valencia, that when that sunk in 1906, as the ship was literally about to go underwater, all of the people who were still holding on to the ship were singing that song together.
Right.
As they were about to die. That is a very, very popular funeral song. Well, not as much anymore because of the Titanic movie, but that song constantly was playing throughout like I even brought it up at one point when we were watching an earlier episode. I was like, this is the Titanic hymn.
Yep.
Like, it literally played at every moment where another nail in the coffin was being hammered, where like, oh shit, the ship is sinking.
Yep.
Like, the ship is sinking. And it was like and also because it is a shipping village, pretty much everyone in that town is a sailor. That just like, there's so many layers. And like that being their final song that they sing as they're literally all about to die. Because like the whole point of the whole message of that song, it quotes a Bible verse from Genesis where Jacob, who couldn't sleep, hit himself in the head with a rock, was unconscious, and that's when he dreamed of the ladder to heaven. So it's kind of a metaphor of a violent death to a peaceful afterlife. So it's just, there's so many layers, and that being the last hymn they sing all together to keep themselves, like, to keep the unity before they all leave this earth.
Yeah.
Oh, it just hit. It hit me in a spot. Like, it was just like, like, I think this might be one of the most perfect, like, stories I've ever watched, because it just, like, just that is one of, like, the million details I can point out where it just all came together.
So I guess from that point of view, I guess that means that it was a lot like Shrek, you know, just layers. It's ogres are like onions, so layers.
Mm-hmm.
Gabe, you had a thought that you wanted to finish.
Yeah, sorry about that.
You're good.
So Father Pruitt, that scene before with his daughter, before that, it was just like with their old friend, their old companion, and like going through that moment where you're like, it's weird because you're like, it's just like it's weird because they're like thinking about, it's like, no, don't worry, this will all be good, this will all be saved, and then sees, and like everything will be good, everything will be fine, everything is going through the purpose of life, and then gets to the scene of Bev, and then sees what is actually happening, and like it's like, this has gone too far, and it's like you can't undo what you did, and it's like, oh hell, it's like, and he just sits in the church, he sits on the church, like the church, and he's like thinking about what he did, and he's like thinking, it's like, this is my, like, and I can think, like, I to me, in my opinion, I feel like he's like, this, I did it, like, this is my fault, I let this thing travel with me, I thought it was an angel, and it was just like, it's like, this is the word of God and all that, and I was just like, you're seeing the faces of your own actions and consequences, and now you finally get to that point where there's like, you can't do anything. And also the scene with the sheriff getting like shot, that scene where he does, I don't remember, I think it was like Palm something, I don't remember the verse, it's like, it was like when we watch it, but the matter of fact, he says that to Bev, and I'm just like, but he gets shot again. I'm just like,
Hungry, aren't you? Just the balls on that man. I'm gonna say, just for like a moment, like, yeah, dude's won me over.
he literally, I loved him since the beginning, because he's like, I'm not playing with your bullshit, Bev. And then he says that at the end. He's like, I know the Bible. I've read the Bible pretty damn well. And he says that, and then Bev's like, and I was just like,
Yep.
this
Yeah,
man,
got nothing to say, do you?
you got nothing to say. And it's just like, Bev had nothing to say, and she just like, I was like, okay. I was like, we see how it goes. The also significance, and I'm gonna go to the referral to what you posted earlier, Blaze, of Bev digging grave. Her digging her grave, and you posted that comment, and I was like, oh my god, that makes so, how did I miss that? Like, I should have known this. And you put that down, and I was like, that's the perfect ending. That's the perfect ending to this goddamn series.
Ocean.
There's been a couple of scenes that I really appreciated with this final installment of Midnight Mass. One of them happens to be the absolute chaos that comes back to, Monsignor Pruitt, and just his whole ideology of it was just, it was for us. It had, you had recently had, when we first met, had you told me to take, to give up the priestdom, I would have. And the way Sarah, I think it was Sarah, was her name Sarah,
Doc's mom?
the mother.
I
Yeah,
can't remember
the
what her
Doc's
name
mom.
was, but anyways.
Well,
I think
Sarah's mom's name is Mildred, I believe.
Mildred essentially said, that I would have never asked you that. I would not be a homewrecker, that kind of thing. And it made sense. She goes, I was doing a duty. I committed infidelity. And it shows just how even a priest is human.
Yep.
And it shows that even he had ulteriors for coming back with this. And that was to bring back, those that he loved. Yes, he wanted to help the church, but he had a very human reason for doing so. It was not a godly one, and I think that was the absolute quintessential understanding that I wanted this religion to do something for me, for a change. And I think that's the thing that really kind of, if you can feel that in your core, because it's a very human thing to feel. I think there was the other part was obviously the absolute betrayal of that Bev did to Monsignor Pruitt, and then of course, as you guys said, the quintessential going down in flames finale that was absolutely just, you couldn't help but love every single one of them. And one of the things, the only two survivors were the kids, and the kids turned over. I mean, there was only two of them that survived, and they said, "Do you think he'll make it before the sunlight hits?" It's like, the mainland's 30 miles away. I don't see how it could. But it did not show the destruction until you heard from what's her name?
Lisa.
Lisa saying, "I can't feel my legs." Yeah, that one just, oh, you knew, you know?
So for me, it's not specifically a scene that gets me. It's an entire course of events. This is the episode where Monsignor Pruitt starts to understand what's happening, what's going on, and exactly what he's done. Exactly what he's let into the people that he's supposed to be watching over. He sits down and has a conversation with his former lover, and she actually starts, I think, to bring a lot of common sense. She actually starts to outline a lot of the more common sense things, despite the fact that they are now, what they are, right? That is a tipping point for him, I think. That's something that he kind of looks at and he's like, wait a minute, a little bit of rational thought here. Oh no, is his immediate reaction. And then he starts looking at Bev with just absolute disgust and pity. You can see it in his fucking eyes. The actor, you can see him looking at her with that in his eyes. And that for me gets me every time. And then he turns around and he's like, the church will always be open to anyone who needs it, despite the fact that the church has now been defiled, despite the fact that it's now covered in blood. He's trying to, I think, return to that semblance of what he once was or what he stood for at one point. And inside the church is his daughter, who's covering it in gasoline. And he looks at her and she looks at him, and it's a very long moment. And then he just nods and he's like, good. Before she gets shot, just out of nowhere, out of the blue, gets just fucking shot, right? That's mirrored with the community hall, with the community center. Mm-hmm. The sheriff gets shot outside, and Bev's making fun of him.
Yeah.
And he looks at her and he's like, yeah, well, the hall's not quite so empty, is it? And out walks, Aaron, was it? Yeah, Aaron.
Oh, Aaron, yeah.
With a gas canister in her hand. She gets picked up by our vampire of this series and, like, carried off. It's the sheriff's kid that tosses the match and literally screws everybody over. He's like the straw that broke the camel's back, effectively. He's like
Yep.
the final, that final middle finger. And then we've got Aaron, who, despite the fact that she's been picked up and carried off by this beast, and he's now feasting on her, she reaches down, grabs her knife, and starts tearing apart his wings ever so slightly. And this thing is so wrapped up in its feeding, it just doesn't care that its wings are being torn apart. We can see it coming, but it can't, because it is so obsessed and in the moment. And when it starts to fly, you can see
And
that
it's-
it can't fly properly anymore.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
I think,
Like,
and then we get the conversation between her and Riley, just her final moments. We get the acceptance from everyone on the island that, yeah, we might have screwed up, we might have been led astray. This is kind of what's happening. We're good with this. And then you get fucking Bev out on the shore trying to dig into the fucking sand, trying to hide from the sun the best she can.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
everybody goes up in smoke.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. The fact that I love how I have to say this, because there's two things that it reminded me of. Because, well, one's from the past episodes, and this first one I'm going to say, because it's this episode. You notice that everyone else, and, like, you can tell that, like, most of all of, like, the town, the town drank from people and killed and revived their friends or family. Is the girl name's Lisa, right?
Lisa, yeah.
Lisa. You notice that she didn't die from the sun, or at least we don't. I don't. Yeah, and she's like, I can't feel my legs because she didn't drink from someone. She didn't take that kill, and that's why I was like, she back to normal. And I'm like thinking the main protagonist or the vampire died because she's like, I can't feel my legs. And so that's why I was like, okay, interesting concept that we have here now. The second one, I'm going to go back to previous episodes because we had this conversation before with the vampire coming out of the cave and being like, and we had this conversation about how if this vampire has been there longer than seeing Jesus, being the person that Jesus walked with the devil, and then part of me, and then going to this recent episode, and then seeing how his wings won't work and he falls to his damnation. So I was like, that might be symbolism, and I was like, that's because I mean you don't necessarily see him fall, but you see like she like cut his wings. He cut it like very to where he's just like he's barely flying, and eventually, he's gonna fall, and then that's when you say Lisa's. I can't feel my legs, so I'm just like so much symbolism between this. It makes me happy, but then it brings back so much religious shit, and I'm just like, okay.
Yep. Well, we've talked about that before at length. A lot of us in here have like a shit ton of religious trauma, I think, which is what makes this series so fucking delicious.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that was interesting. I thought those two things were interesting, and I was like,
So now that we've looked at this episode kind of in detail, we've all kind of picked things out. Let's pull back a little bit. And Quinn, yes, I would highly recommend this show. This show for me is honestly a comfort thing. And getting the tastes that you and I have in common, I think you would actually really like this one. I think this would be right up your alley. But then again, I might be a little biased. Let's take a moment and let's pull back and let's look at the series overall. What do you guys got to say?
I love this series overall. I think that both at the end there's kind of two sides where it's like the Bev side and the good people side. I think both sides could have benefited from being not being what I call chronic yappers. Um, where um if you had just like used your brain instead of your mouth, I think that we could have maybe saved some people. Um, or B, Bev, you could have found a hiding spot if you weren't monologuing about God.
She could have actually turned around and maybe dug herself a decent hole.
The
Yeah.
one problem I have, I was rewatching this show like a lot afterwards
Mhm.
because sorry to the audience, I was a little inebriated the first time I
You're
talked
good.
it. I indulged in this show. So I went back and I watched some of it again with a clear mind. Um the there was a bridge that Pruitt and Mildred and Sarah's dead body they all go to and be emo on.
Yep.
Why didn't Bev, you've lived on this island your whole life. You didn't know about the bridge that clearly was like a little domed bridge that had a very nice hiding spot underneath that you could have used, Bev.
Yeah.
You didn't know?
Well,
You didn't know?
don't forget, she's a coward.
She is a coward
She
and
has
she's
no
stupid.
honor, and she doesn't use her fucking brain. So
Yeah. I have a question that I would like to pose to all of you about the whole series as a whole, because I thought of this question and it's been in my brain ever since. Do we think that Bev truly believed in God? Or did she just use God to get herself power?
I'm gonna let everyone else answer before I answer because I think I have what might be a unique take on that.
Okay. Okay. Real quick, I'm gonna think. Okay. So I think in the beginning of the series, I think she did truly I think there is a well verse that she did have. I mean, because she's done this since her whole life. So I believe that she did believe there was a God, that there was a higher power, and that she was faithful towards it. And then I feel like that went down the whole very not. I wouldn't say quickly, but I wouldn't say slowly either. I would say it went down pretty good about when they discovered Father Pruitt and the whole ordeal with the blood and all that. And I think that's when she thought the power of a god is like the of not thinking of the god, just thinking of the power that which they held in their hands and all that, and what you said, Jasper, and that's what I was like. I think that's when it went to that point. I think there was a point that she did truly believe there was a god, or she had faith in it, but then that went down the hole.
I think she thinks God is power. I think she has that's what I truly believe is she thinks like God and her God is power. So then she was extra nasty to all of the non-believers and the sinners after Lisa began to walk again, because in her mind it was like, okay, here is the proof that my God that I have been worshiping is power. And so like everything is real, so I am justified.
Yeah.
I think because she grew up in the church where God is power and only men, priests, can use the power of God, I think that applied to everything. because she didn't do a singular thing for herself. She would either tell a man to do it, have a man do it, or had men do everything. So when men weren't doing what she wanted or what she thought was right, she would be so vindictive and so nasty toward them. Like the whole idea of the sheriff, I think made her so angry because like this was a man who didn't believe in her God and just like and then even when he was like, "Lady, we have the same God," she was like, "Oh no, 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 we don't." Like it's I think that she thinks her God and her very distorted ideas is power. And so that's why she was so devoted and then became so toxically involved.
Yeah.
Okay, so how I picture Bev and the character arc of Bev, and there is a character arc. I think there's a big character arc. Not a big. When I say that, it's very much a, it's a hump. It's not a arc as you would see with others. But when we first meet Bev, we already know she didn't like many things. In fact, you could hear about it in the backstory when others were expositioning her as, ever since the flood thing, she said for us to take the money that was provided by the corporate during the oil spill, all that created this like, the center, uh, and named it after Pruitt because Pruitt was her idol, as the best way I can put it. She wanted to do everything to make this as she saw with him at the forefront. And as you progress, you can see how just nasty she was to everybody. It started being like very subtle at first. The poisoning of the dog was one of the bigger overt things, but you didn't know it was her. But the speculation was that it was. She was very subtle at first. She didn't make it known that she did these things. And then eventually, slowly but surely, it grew and grew until eventually you start seeing her saying more audacious things, more crass and, very judgmental, very against the things, including the idea of just becoming a radical for what she believed. And the fact that when miracles, quote unquote, miracles were starting to happen, she was like, it's got to be the faith, it's got to be the faith. But somewhere down the line between the vampirism of when she was, when she drank her blood, she feared being shot, she feared death. I think that was something that absolutely was portrayed when she said, "All I have is, even if you shoot me now, it'll only, I'll get up in 5 minutes," that kind of thing, and just immediately get shot, So she had no real control over that, but she thought this was how I can gain eternal life. And about that time is when she just was like, I feared that. You can tell with how she went with things. She would use her piety as an absolute weapon against her fellow man. She would dehumanize uh, people that she thought were unworthy of even the gifts. She was very much willing to say, well, I don't believe this person deserved it. And that was never, Pruitt would continue saying, we don't have, it's not our jurisdiction, that's not our place to say, that kind of thing. He would continually, subtly correct her, and she'd, bite her lip or bite her tongue on things up until the very end when she eventually betrays and turns against Pruitt and said, "This is my final test." But what at the very end, when you see it happening, you see that Bev doesn't want to die and is fearful of death. So she's trying to, like, after all the things were on, well, all the buildings were on fire, there was no recourse or place to really, hide. She was the one digging in the dirt, basically saying, "Look, this, I don't want to die. How do I get out of it? And very end, just cowardly dies. And I think that was a perfect analogy to just kind of her story arc from being a devout but very hypocritical practitioner of her faith.
Okay. So, I am of the firm opinion that there was a point in time where Bev may have been a good woman. Not the person that we knew. She may have been an actual good person. I think that it was the church itself that corrupted her and started to twist her. And once that happened, the door was open. Once Bev was twisted and corrupted, she was able to spread that corruption to literally everyone else around, and she is the entire reason that everyone else on that island is gone. I think that she got a little too ahead of herself. I think if she had gone through things a little bit differently, that we would have had a very different outcome to this story, and that island probably would have survived if she had actually done things and like if she had actually had half a brain thinking about this shit instead of just what I want. This is good for me. Like if I have all of these people, she's very much I-minded. If she had actually thought about other people and how they could have helped her, this story would have ended so much differently. My take is Bev is corruption.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bev is the damnation of this entire island. And that, for me, speaks to me on a level that I don't quite know how to put into words. I left the church in some respects over corruption, one might say, over two-facedness, over people saying one thing and doing another. Don't want to get too far into that, but it's very much, it calls to me on a very personal level. And it's that kind of hypocrisy, specifically Bev's type of hypocrisy, that I absolutely despise. But I'm very much of the opinion that Bev is the corruption, and it was the church that is the reason that she can be considered the corruption of the church itself.
Yeah.
That and also the
Well,
church
then,
being that and the church being the one thing that protected her as
Yep.
well from the rest. That was the thing that got me, was just how she clung onto that and was a part of it, because that was her world. That was her purview of life. She looked at everything black and white. It was either evil or it was good. There was no in between.
And as we all know, one of the things that you absolutely cannot do in this life, at least as far as my personal experience, is look at things black and white. There are shades of gray, there are shades of different colors. Like,
yep.
you start looking at things in black and white, you're gonna run into fucking issues. Every
Yeah.
goddamn time.
See, to me, when you say like she was corruption, and I see that, and I'm like looking at it like, because they're always like, like corruption, evil, always hidden until they come out or whatever. Like it's that, and to me, when I see it, I'm like, that kind of makes sense with that, because yeah, there are like, how do I say this? There are ways to where you see it and you see, yeah, Bev is an asshole. You can definitely see it. But in that situation, in that setting, in that world, where, yeah, you see, like, people are like, yeah, she's not the greatest person, but she lies and manipulates and deceives. So she's in that pocket to where she's like, I'm not the bad guy. I'm just here. I'm just making amends. I'm trying to do goodwill, but also giving that sneaky corruption, that lies and manipulation, to where she's like, would you, like, in the episode, like, do you think I would ever try to poison a harmless animal? And it's just like, it's that little petty, like, yeah, she is the corruption. She's the back pocket of that corruption that seeps out. And it's like, it's like that ink. It's like the ink that you didn't know it was in your pocket, and it seeps into your cloth when it gets wet, and it seeps more and more until you see it, and then you're like, ah. So that's why I was like, that's bad. That is corruption. That is very much hidden corruption that comes out. And you're like, oh,
Any other quick final thoughts on the series thus far?
This healed something in me.
Yep.
yep.
This healed the a good chunk of the religious trauma I didn't know I had left.
So,
Like a good chunk of it. Like getting to see every facet, getting to see every side. That like it was like, we're not obviously going to get too deep into it. This isn't a religious whatever I'm trying to say. But I did love it. I'm definitely going to rewatch it. Loved it.
One of the oh, go ahead.
Okay. Just kind of circling back around to how I mentioned, everything has to be looked at in shades of gray as opposed to black and white. When we sit down to play, I'm going to just tie in here. When we sit down to play VTM on Sunday nights, one of the things I tell you about storytelling is that just because something is considered a dark theme, something is considered, taboo, doesn't necessarily mean that it's evil. It can be absolutely used to heal. It can be absolutely therapeutic to explore those ideas. A lot of people won't because it's taboo by society, right? But those are some of the most powerful stories I've ever seen. They call to me on a level that not much else does. I think we don't go down that road often enough, and I think this story, because it is a story made up of, very much smaller stories all coming together, I think that this is very much one of those stories that takes those darker themes and explores them and is like, what if? Sorry, Ocean, go ahead.
There's a couple of there's about a layer's worth, if not more so, multi-layered things that have helped me about this is absolutely vindicated the reason why and justified a voice in me that is normally unheard, especially with my past and whatnot regarding the church aspect. But it also comes back to me on a level of this is a new take on on vampires that was not yet seen. The confusion of whether this was a demonic movie or if this was a vampire movie, it kind of blurred the lines on this. And I think that's what really kind of drove me to being allured to it in the first place, was because it holds elements of both. And I think that's something that not only helped me and inspired me on a couple of different ideas that I have now that will stick with me, and just the idea of how life and how when we get into the whole philosophy of what happens after we die type thing, it gives a new light and a new sensation or purpose to it that I've not seen before. And it's said and told in such a narrative that is not only with thought and care in how it's cultivated and presented. It gives to a level that like you said, it shows it gives a discomfort to the audience, because this can resonate with someone so wholeheartedly and have dealt with day in and day out that it may hit a little too close for home for some, where for a lot of those that have that, it also, for those that can actually get through it all the way through, understand the beauty of why it had to be said in this setting in this way, and it absolutely takes on to different aspects of other walks of life. So this was really a story not just of one person, but of an island. It wasn't just a focal point to just one person or the other. It actually was about this small little village, this hamlet, if you will, this small little island, and just how each person had a narrative and a story behind it and why they did the things they did.
Yep. Goop, Jasper, final thoughts.
If you have Netflix, check it out. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Um, I think that um, Justice for Riley.
Hmm.
Um, oh my god, there's just too much. It's too much to talk about.
Yeah.
Like, we are in. I keep being like, oh, I wanted to talk about this. And it's like, if I keep doing that, we're going to be here until like 2 in the morning.
Yep.
Um,
There's a lot to unpack
so
with this show.
there's so much to unpack. There's so much that we didn't even talk about.
Hmm.
Like, we could talk about the music choices. We could talk about the
Yeah.
Bible verses that they used. We could put all of the Bible verses that Bev used back into context that they were used
Yep.
in the Bible and just see how wrong she is to use them. Like, we could do so much. There is 10 years worth of work put into this project. There's too much for us to get at in 2 hours. So watch it.
This is
Dive
very,
into it on your own. It's good.
this is very much a heavy series. There's a lot packed into this very short series.
It's 7 episodes.
Yeah, it's a very short series, but there's a lot packed into here, and you're absolutely right. We could sit here and talk until we're blue in the face, and we still wouldn't cover everything. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't explore those ideas and those thoughts, which I want to talk about after we're done here. But Goob, go ahead.
I have a nephew that's crying. So I apologize if you hear that. He's adorable. So I honestly think final thoughts of it is I think it's a wonderful series that everyone should watch with or without religious trauma. Um, it does it. I think for me, it gives me like it gives. I don't even know how to describe this. Looking back, because through my religious trauma and being Catholic and being spiritually active over more than just being Catholic and seeing the corruption and seeing the misguidance and seeing so much counter like what do you call it, the word just like different things that question like this and this testament and that testament, and you when you watch the series you just think of how much like, oh, I've seen this, I've witnessed this, I've experienced this, and or to some degree, and it's just it gives you that. It doesn't give me that cringe. It gives me more like it gives me the slight humor, but like I remember this. I've had this before with a bev. I've had to where you question faith and to where everything comes into a weird thing where it's to myself, I'm not the only one that had this. I'm not. I've had this experience before, and to where I can be able to say, it's okay, and like, it's okay to like question things. It's okay to like to question even your faith, and even like in like to where like I know where the series is going to between this and saying like God is all, God is everything, God is love, and I'm like, well, it's like and it's like it gets to that weird point to where I'm like, gives me content. It gives me the inner. It does like what Krista said. It gives me the inner peace, and I'm just like to where I've been able to be like, okay, I'm happy to where it's out in the open. It's not just hidden. It's not like where people can like in the show is like hush about it, but to where it's like you see it and you're like, okay, I'm concerned with this. I'm relieved. I love the show. I love the thrill and the mystery between it, where it slowly unpacks itself.
Hmm.
It's not fast. It's slow, but it's worth the wait.
It's a slow burn.
I Yeah, it's a slow burn, and it's very much like there were some episodes I was like it was slow, and then there were some episodes like okay, we're getting the mysteries unpacked, and I think this was a really good series, a really good mix, a really good thriller between the vampires and even just religious affiliations, and I just thought I loved it.
Cool. So now we come to the point of this where we rate this episode, and I'm going to do the series as a whole in this case. So we're not rating episode 7; we're rating the entire series overall. Okay. Does it fit in? Given that we've now concluded the series, does it fit in with vampire lore and mythos? Would you recommend it to somebody else? Does it fit in with vampire lore? Would you recommend it to somebody else? And there was another one. Sorry,
How
my brain just
campy is it?
kind of how campy is it? We're gonna do a scale of
Yeah.
1 to 5.
That, and I think there was another one of would you recommend it to your
Yeah, like
to,
would you
to
recommend
people?
it? Does it fit in with lore ish? We'll go with on a scale of 1 to 5. We're gonna start with Goob. Quickly, what are your thoughts?
What was the first one again?
Sorry, would you recommend it? And does it fit in
Oh,
with vampire lore?
highly recommend, 5 out of 5. And I think for vampire lore, I think it fits a 4 out of 5. I would say 4 out of 5, possibly maybe a 3.5, but I'm sticking with 4.
Cool. Jasper.
I feel like really the only thing that they touched on in vampire lore is transferred by blood and sun bad. Um, honestly, uh, I know that Krisha will have many more thoughts to say on this, but the fact that they said it was like some kind of blood disorder or something, or they compared it to a blood disorder of some kind, that was weird. Um, I'm gonna give it I'll give it a 3 though. I mean, sun bad. That's a pretty big vampire thing.
Would you recommend it?
Oh, sorry. I didn't realize we were doing all 3 at once.
Yeah, I basically taken our rating system that we started with and condensed it a little bit to make it
Oh,
a
okay.
little more wieldy.
All right. Recommend it? Absolutely. Yes, 100%. How campy is it? Negative a billion. Um, everybody here is in Gap City, and they will not stop talking about death and religion and everything that is vibe killing is in this show. Don't watch this to have fun. You are here to think. You are not here to laugh. But other than that, it's a fantastic show. It does give you things to think about. I say that it's here to make you think, and you will think. Um, I mean, overall, I would give it a 4.5. I can't give it the 5 out of 5 because I don't think it's very true to Vampy lore. Because I feel like there's like lore for vampires where if you feed them blood, like there's like there's like a thrall or something that is not. I don't know. Maybe I'm silly. Um, yeah, I'll do 4 out of 5. 4.5 out of 5. I love it a lot.
Let's go with Ocean.
All right. Well, I have. Do I think this is true to lore for a vampire movie? Yes and no. Yes, it has a vampire in it. No, because I don't think this movie is about the vampire. I think it's about ghouls. If this was set up to be a ghoul movie, absolutely. This is a movie about ghouls and how they work. So I give that a bit of a 3. I knocked 2 stars off of that, or 2 steaks, whatever. Um, do I find it entertaining? Absolutely. This is a thought provoking series in its entirety. It is something I absolutely would recommend, but don't do it for the simple fact of just casually glancing at it. It will tug at you. It will make you feel uncomfortable. It will entertain you in ways that you didn't think it could. Is it a horror? Yes, absolutely a horror movie. Uh, but again, it blurs the line between demon and vampire a lot. Um, how I picture its campiness, the campiness, in my opinion, is that there isn't a whole lot of comedic elements in this. In fact, there's almost none, in my opinion. This was not meant to be a funny movie. This gave, without being over the top and melodramatic, it did give a level of understanding, and it gave to a camp of 0%. And I think I would absolutely recommend this to people who uh, can understand it for what it is without getting mad about it because of what it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It definitely will raise a lot of questions more than answers in your head, and just resonates relatably.
Krisha.
I agree with the rest. This isn't, when it comes to vampire lore, this movie is about the fear of death and all the facets. Not movie. This show's about the fear of death and all of its facets. This is not a vampire. This is not about vampires necessarily. So in terms of vampire lore, I give it a 3 out of 5. Zero camp. This is literally about everyday people falling to corruption, and also, again, fear of death and the twists and turns anyone will do to avoid it. So in terms of camp, there is no camp. However, I still give this show a 4.5 out of 5, strictly because of just how beautifully it was done, the message it spreads, how much it makes you think. Every facet of it was well thought out, every facet of it was well done. Loved it.
So, do I think this holds to vampire lore? It gets a 1 out of 5 for me. I'm going to be extremely critical about this. There are certain things that line up, but it lacks a lot. Yeah, it's got vampires in it, doesn't necessarily mean it holds up to lore. Would I recommend this to people? 5 out of 5. Hands down. And again, zero camp. This for me is a comfort thing, though. This for me is an intellect. This show is meant for intellectuals. This show is meant to make you think. This show is meant to make you question things. It's meant to make you go, things might not always be the way that they seem. There's more, just under the skin than... There's more to appearances than just what you're seeing. There's more to people than just what you're seeing on appearance. That sort of thing. And I do very much think that there are people out there who are not going to get that will not understand that, and that unfortunately saddens me, but it's the way of the world. So, 1 out of 5 and a 5 out of 5 on my end. That being said, 1 second. Damn phone calls. And yes, that was the Beetlejuice theme if you heard that. That being said, I think we're going to go ahead and get this episode wrapped up. I think this has been an invigorating discussion. If you would like to watch us next episode, we are going to be watching the 1980s movie, again, Near Dark. Again, love it. It's not for everyone. It is, so take what you've seen here with Midnight Mass and just go in the complete opposite direction. That is Near Dark. 1980s, blood, guts, gore, gratuitous violence. Yeah, it comes with all of that. With any luck, we will be live again next Monday for that, and for this episode of Masquerade Breach. I'm Blazewing.
I'm Catherine Cosplays.
I'm Jasper.
I'm Amelia.
And I'm Ocean.
And remember, don't tell the Camarilla. I've got enough on my plate as it is. I don't need to clean up any messes.